You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. Good morning, Visa Office. How can I help you?
Good morning. I'd like to apply for a visa to Australia, please.
Certainly, sir. I'll just get a form, and then I'll need to take down some details. Okay, here we go. Right. Can I have your name, please?
Yes, it's Okamura. Kelly Okamura.
And how do you spell that, please?
K-E-L-L.
No, your family name, please.
Oh, sorry. It's O-K-A-M-U-R-A.
O-K-A-M-U-R-A. And your address?
Apartment 106, Kingston Street, Hawaii.
Kingston Street, Hawaii?
Yes, that's correct.
So you're an American?
Actually, I was born in Japan, but moved to Hawaii 6 years ago.
And can I have your age, please, Mr. Okamura?
I'm 32.
And are you married?
Yes, I am. My wife's Chinese.
And will your wife accompany you to Australia?
Yes, she will. In fact, that's the reason we want to go. Her sister lives in Sydney.
And do you have any relatives living in Australia?
I used to have an uncle, but he died several years ago. Now there's only my sister-in-law and my wife's cousin.
So the purpose of your trip is to visit your wife's relatives, am I correct?
Well, not exactly. Mainly because I have my own trading company and will be looking for business opportunities. Although I do want to do some traveling as well. You know, see some of the sights, that sort of thing. Although I don't intend to work in Australia.
And your wife, what will she be doing?
She'll be studying English, so she wants a student visa.
And how long do you plan to stay?
About 1 year, I guess.
Well, I'm afraid a standard tourist visa is only valid for 30 days, although in your case we can issue you with a business visa. Business visas last for 6 months, but you will be able to renew it. We can give your wife a 12-month visa, though.
6 months is okay. So what do I need to do now?
Come along to the office any time during weekdays, but it must be office hours. We close at 5:30. And bring along 2 passport-size photos and your passport, of course. Your wife will also need 2 photos, so that's 4 passport-size photos in total.
Okay. Well, thank you for your help. Bye.
Bye. Section 2.
You will now hear a short news item. Fill in the gaps in the summary of the news item according to what you hear. Now listen to the news item and answer questions 11 to 20. The minister responsible declined to make any further statement, and now with more information on the situation in Lytham, we cross to Sophie Roberts at the scene of today's major traffic accident. Good evening. Yes, Kelly. The situation here in Avalon Road, Lytham, is chaotic. The death toll is rising with 3 known fatalities and a further 14 people receiving treatment at the local St John's Hospital. A few moments ago, I spoke with the police rescue officer in charge, Chief Inspector McManus, who told me that it would be at least 2 hours before the northbound lane was reopened, and even longer for the southbound lane that is still strewn with vehicles. He urged all drivers to find an alternative route through Lytham. Is there any clear indication as to what caused the disaster? Well, yes, Kelly. They are starting to put together the accounts of the witnesses. Ah, here is Chief Inspector McManus. Inspector, could you spare us a moment, please?
Well, yes, just a moment though. As you can see, I have a lot on right now.
Yes, thank you. Now tell me, do you have any more information for us?
Yes, it seems, from what I can piece together so far, from the statements that the witnesses have made, that the driver of a large articulated lorry lost control of his vehicle as he came down the road there. As you're aware, it's a very steep stretch of dual carriageway, and it would have been very difficult for the driver to bring his vehicle back under control coming down that hill. There was queue of traffic turning into Avon Road from Batty Avenue. They wouldn't have been able to do anything. I'm sorry, I must get back to work.
Yes, of course, Inspector. Thank you for your time. I also have with me Mr. Ted Higgins, a local shopkeeper, who told us that he heard the lorry sounding its horn before the accident.
Well, I was just unloading my van outside the shop here, and I heard this horn, you know, much worse than an ordinary car horn, and it just went on, getting louder and louder, and then I think I was holding a box of tomatoes, and there was this huge lorry coming down the road, horn going, and the lights were on, travelling really fast. I don't know, maybe 80 or 90 miles per hour. It came straight down through the lights, right at the moment the traffic was turning into the main road, you know, Avon Road from Batty Avenue. It just seemed to pick up the cars as it went along. I tell you, it was a real mess.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. And so back to you, Kelly, in the studio. Thank you, Sophie. Anyone wanting further information regarding those injured in the accident should ring St John's Hospital, which has set up a hotline, and the number is Sydney 0171 389 1778. I'll repeat that number, 0171 389 1778. And now, with all the news of sport, here is Charles Oakton. That is the end of this section. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to this section.
Section 3. Zoe goes to talk to her academic advisor. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now, listen carefully to the conversation between Zoe and her advisor and answer questions 21 to 30.
How are you getting on, Zoe? Feeling at home yet?
Well, more or less. There are still some things I need to buy, and I haven't found my way to all the facilities yet. But I really love the campus, and I've already made a few friends.
Fantastic. Now let's see what we can do to get your studies off to the right start too. You're on the foundation course, so you can take up to 8 modules. What we advise is that you take 4 modules in the first semester, and assuming everything goes well, 4 in the second. Have you decided which you want to take this semester?
I haven't made up my mind yet. I can't decide whether to take Principles of Marketing or Introduction to International Trade.
Well, that depends on your career goals. You're planning to work in the biotechnology sector, aren't you?
Well, that's my present thinking, but I guess I might change my mind.
Right. Well, marketing is a broad general subject that you will find really useful in a number of careers. International trade, on the other hand, is more specific. That's fine if you're sure it's the sort of work you want to do. A lot of students start off thinking about that option because it seems glamorous, but marketing can also be an exciting career, and there's a wide choice of jobs. Maybe you ought to wait until your career ideas are a bit more definite before you go down that road.
Yes, I see. I could take international trade next year, couldn't I?
Sure, you can do international finance as well. So, in your first semester, you've got Principles of Marketing, Introduction to Economics, Banking and Finance, and let's see, Principles of Financial Accounting. How do you feel about that as a package?
It's okay, I think, but I'm a bit worried about the maths. There will be some statistics to do, won't there?
Basic statistics, yes, but nothing more difficult than your last year of school maths.
I know, but our math syllabus was a bit old-fashioned. Mostly algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and stuff. Hardly any stats.
Right. Well, it sounds as if you could do with the maths brush up, of course. I can arrange for you to attend just the classes on statistics if you like.
That'd be great. I didn't want to do the whole of maths again, but the stats classes would make me feel much more confident. Thanks.
Hang on a minute. There's one more thing. Your English. Now you know you have to reach a satisfactory standard in English by the end of your first year to be allowed to go on to the main Bachelor of Science course.
Yeah. Now I'm in an English-speaking environment and have to speak English all the time. I'm sure I'll be all right.
It certainly helps, but speaking isn't everything. You'll have to get your reading up to the standard where you can understand the books on your course reading list quickly to get the information and ideas you need to write your essays. That means you have to develop a higher level of comprehension skills. You'll never get through all the course material if you try to read the books intensively from cover to cover. That's why our language skills development program gives you a series of graded academic texts to study and answer questions on in a limited time. You'll probably find it quite hard at first, having to work against the clock without a dictionary.
How can I improve my skimming and scanning skills?
Good question. For that, you'll have to do a range of specially designed exercises. Sometimes these will be from a transparency, a tranny, because that is quite often how the lecture material is presented.
Sometimes I think I'll never learn all the vocabulary. English is such an enormous language.
I know what you mean. English is the biggest language ever, at least 350,000 words. Even Winston Churchill only knew 60,000, so they say. But as an academic student, you can get a lot of help from the academic word list by Avril Coxhead of Victoria University. That's in Wellington, New Zealand.
I've studied word lists, of course, but how does this one help?
The academic word list is based on a survey of 3,500,000 words of academic text. It contains 570 families of the words most commonly found in academic texts. Well, that's apart from the 2,000 most useful words in English. They come in a separate list. You can see copies of both in the library.
You said word families. Do you mean words that are similar?
In a way, yes. It means all the different grammatical forms of a word are listed together. So you can see the noun, verb, adjective, forms of prefixes, suffixes, and so forth. It'll be clearer when you look at it. Anyway, Avril Coxhead gives you really great hints about how to learn the words, so it shouldn't be too daunting.
The trouble is, I tend to forget the words I learn.
Well, there are two ways you can tackle that. First, always try to learn the words in a context. Either learn a whole sentence using the word, or learn a phrase that the word typically comes in. We call phrases like that collocations.
That's a new one on me. Collocations. I'd better make a note of it.
You do that. You can find collocations in most modern dictionaries. Anyway, as I was saying, there's a second study aid I recommend for vocabulary learning. When you get an assignment, take a sheet of paper and write 4 headings. Words I can use, words I can recognize but can't use, words I'm not sure of, words I don't know. Don't bother with the simple words, of course. Then go back after 2 weeks and look at these lists again. Can you move any of the words into a better column?
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Section 4.
In this section, you will hear a lecture about coastal environmental problems. First, read the summary of the lecture made by a student and look at questions 31 to 40. As you listen, complete the summary. Use no more than 3 words for each answer. The first one has been done for you as an example. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have with us Mr. Kevin Ackroyd, a representative from the Department of Environment, to outline the results of last year's inquiry into environmental problems along the coastline. Mr. Ackroyd.
Thank you, Miss Cranston. Good afternoon, everyone. Perhaps it would be best if I first outlined for you what I plan to talk about. I'll begin with some background into the inquiry, looking at the new demands we are making on our old resources, so to speak, and then go on to give you some idea of the conclusions we came to in our inquiry. Okay, first the background. The inquiry was sparked off because various concerned residents in the coastal region realised that the recent population shift, which really got going in the 1970s, was putting extreme pressure on our coastal environment. Over the past 2 decades, half of the country's population growth has been in the non-metropolitan areas. Today, 9 out of 10 people live in the coastal zone. The reasons for this shift are not yet fully understood, but there is a range of factors which probably contribute, including economic development, an ageing population, and growth in industry, particularly tourism and its associated industries. We would have to admit that government policies have also contributed to this trend, a trend which is likely to continue, so that it's estimated that by the year 2000 there will be 1 million additional people living in the non-metropolitan coastal zone. This population expansion puts considerable pressure on the natural resources of the zone, and there are 2 factors likely to impose particular strains. These are firstly that those areas of greatest growth in the past are likely to continue to grow as strong as before. In other words, urban sprawl or expansion will continue for at least another decade. The second factor contributing to this pressure is industry, particularly the newer industries like tourism. These newer industries will compete for resources with other users such as intensive fish and shellfish farming industry. All of this will take place in an environment which is already under severe stress, and in particular the water resources will be degraded. It is the view of the inquiry that water degradation, whether of seas, rivers or lakes, is the greatest resource problem in the coastal one as a whole. Now the conclusions of the inquiry can be stated quite plainly and simply. First, we must raise the profile of the coastal zone in our thinking, especially in our approach to conservation and economic development. Second, we must exercise much greater vision. We must be prepared to think in the long term rather than the short term, and to pay attention to detail, so better management and better planning. And thirdly, we must adopt a national approach. We can no longer afford to leave the decision making to individual departments, to local government bodies, or even to central government. We are looking here at the need for coordination on a nationwide level to achieve workable, effective results involving all levels of government as well as the various non-government organisations in this country, will be no easy task, but it is imperative we try. Well, I see time is running out, so perhaps I'll just summarise the recommendations made by the inquiry for you. The long view prevails over the short. Broad considerations predominate over narrow. The techniques of modern management and the tools of modern economics are brought into operation. People being affected by decisions, including indigenous people, are adequately consulted before decisions are made. With that, I'll stop and give you the opportunity to ask a few questions. But perhaps first, I should tell you that the full report of the inquiry is available from the GPS, the Government Publishing Service.
That is the end of section 4, and you will have 30 seconds to check your answers. That is the end of section 4 and of the listening test.